to those living with epilepsy. Now, Mary Ann and I established the Danny Did Foundation in January of this year, shortly after the December 2009 death of our 4-year-old son, Danny. He died of a seizure while he was sleeping. Danny was an engaging, athletic, affectionate, and intelligent little boy who had his first seizure less than 2 years before his last seizure killed him. Danny only seized while sleeping, and to our knowledge, he had no more than 5 seizures, including his last. Now, in the 11 months since Danny died, I've learned a lot about epilepsy. I've learned, simply put, that epilepsy is a disorder of the nervous system characterized by either loss of attention or by convulsions. I've learned that seizure disorder and epilepsy are interchangeable descriptions of a single condition. I've learned that epilepsy affects 3 million people in the US and 50 million people globally. And I've learned that 45,000 cases of epilepsy are diagnosed each year in the US in children under 15 years of age. The kicker, though, is that I've learned this staggering fact. Close to 50,000 people die from epilepsy-related causes, including SUDEP, each year in the United States. And with those kind of numbers, you'd think that a disorder like epilepsy would be at the forefront of the nation's mind and on the tip of every medical professional's tongue. Yet, in nearly 2 years' worth of doctor's visits, the term epilepsy was never raised to Mary Ann or me, nor, of course, was sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. We were told that Danny had a childhood seizure disorder that he would likely outgrow. The fundamental message we heard was this: we don't know why it's happening, we don't know how to stop it, but if we follow a strict medicinal regimen and conduct occasional EEGs, there's no great cause for concern. Now, as many of you know, seeing your child seize is terrifying. So hearing that we just needed to ride this out was a lot to swallow, and as absolutely no insight was offered into the rare but possible occurrence of death that is associated with the condition, what else could we or would we do but accept and trust the strategy? Since Danny's death, many medical professionals have told us that talking about SUDEP is difficult, as there's little that can be done to combat its toll. Our stance is this: parents, as adults, are equipped to take in information and to act in their child's best interest. Had we known of SUDEP, we would have addressed Danny's condition differently. Regardless of whether or not the outcome we now face was an inevitability, having knowledge of SUDEP as communicated by Danny's doctor and then taking measures on our own to combat this potential outcome is the route we would have chosen. As Danny seized only while sleeping, not a night would have passed where Danny slept unmonitored. Cardio and respiratory monitoring devices would have been considered. Seizure detection and seizure prediction devices would have been investigated. Contact with the Epilepsy Foundation would have been initiated, and entrance into the community of parents with kids like Danny would have been pursued. Would any of this have saved Danny? I don't know. But I do know that Danny did not die on any of the occasions that we caught him having a seizure, as we were able to address the seizure as it occurred. We could position him correctly, we could administer medicine, we could call emergency personnel. We could be with him in his greatest time of need. We were Danny's guardians, his protectors. Our job was to advocate for his health, to defend his well-being, to guide him through his years until he could take the reins on his own. And yet we did not know what we were facing. That is difficult to accept, and it is maddening. The work of determining ways to prevent SUDEP is a work of extreme importance. As evidenced by Danny's death, even people with infrequent seizures are at risk of succumbing to SUDEP. And right now, of equal importance to finding ways to prevent SUDEP is the willingness of medical professionals to address SUDEP with seizure disorder patients. For our part, we're addressing SUDEP through the Danny Did Foundation. The implementation of the Danny Did Foundation's mission to prevent deaths caused by seizures is achieved by focusing on two main goals. One, by advancing awareness of SUDEP and enhancing the SUDEP communication model between medical professionals and those afflicted by seizures. And two, through the mainstreaming of seizure detection and seizure prediction devices, as well as other technologies that may assist in preventing deaths caused by seizures. In other words, we want people affected by seizures to be informed of SUDEP. We want to challenge and encourage pediatricians, nurses, neurologists, and epileptologists to talk to their patients about SUDEP. And we want everyone to learn about technologies that may assist in preventing SUDEP. I think that these goals are attainable, and I think that the pursuit of these goals is warranted and extremely worthwhile. In the 10 months since the Danny Did Foundation has been in existence, we have heard and continue to hear regularly from people across the country and around the globe who tell us that their doctors do not know what SUDEP is. We hear that children are brought in emergency rooms with a first onset of seizures and are told that seizures will most likely never occur again, and that the family is then sent home with no further information. We too hear from parents who are told that their children will not seize during sleep, and more incredibly, the children are told that their children cannot die from a seizure. The existence of such attitudes and opinions regarding the effects and the challenges of seizure disorders are the crux of what the Danny Did Foundation seeks to be a part of changing. We believe that the accepted standard of care model followed by medical professionals in their treatment process for seizure patients should include talking about epilepsy when meeting a patient with a first onset of seizures. We believe that the accepted standard of care model followed by medical professionals in their treatment process for seizure patients should also include talking about resources that are dedicated to educating about epilepsy and to assisting those living with the effects of epilepsy. The American Epilepsy Society, the American Epilepsy Foundation, and its dozens of local and highly organized chapters like this one, and Citizens United for Research in Epilepsy come to mind as organizations that all medical professionals involved with seizures should be aware of. And we also believe that the accepted standard of care model followed by medical professionals in their treatment process for seizure patients should include a discussion of the known facts of epilepsy and of the broad range of possible obstacles and outcomes associated for people with epilepsy, such as issues of safety and risks of death. Ultimately, we are striving to be a part of the change that affects not only the overall standard of care model among medical professionals, but on a more individual level, we aim to compel all medical professionals to re-examine what they believe to be their own duty of care owed to seizure patients and their families. I do understand that I have the luxury of talking about fighting SUDEP and epilepsy in such simplistic terms. Not being a medical expert, I cannot and do not claim to have knowledge regarding the complexity of epilepsy or of its source, the brain. But I am without question a supremely qualified expert in losing a child to the effects of epilepsy. And that fact alone grants me a great deal of leeway in how I view and understand the problem. I remember watching Danny seize. His eyes rolling back, his mouth foaming, his arms and legs shaking. It is an uncomfortable and an unnerving vision. And I remember thinking that it's all the result of misfires in the brain. And now I think, simply I know, that the brain is just a finite structure, and with enough awareness of the magnitude of the breadth of the condition of epilepsy, and with enough money, and with enough passion, and with enough shared knowledge, and with enough communication among patients, medical professionals, and researchers, the brain can be examined and analyzed until a cure for epilepsy is discovered and deaths are prevented. In the meantime, though, lack of specific knowledge about the causes of SUDEP should not result in a lack of general awareness of SUDEP. And the Danny Did Foundation is committed to serving as a reservoir of information for ongoing SUDEP studies and for advancements in technologies that may play a role in preventing SUDEP. To date, the Danny Did Foundation has had some wonderful successes. Together with the Epilepsy Foundation of Greater Chicago, we've played a lead role in initiating an upcoming 3-hospital clinical trial of a seizure detection device. This study is the first of its kind in the U.S. and will provide valuable data that doctors can use to make informed recommendations to their patients. This is no small feat, and we are very proud to be a part of spearheading this effort. On a less technological front, and also in collaboration with the Epilepsy Foundation of Greater Chicago, the Danny Did Foundation has created and distributed over 8,000 seizure safety and SUDEP information brochures to families, hospitals, doctors, and epilepsy organizations across the U.S. We have heard from hundreds of people that this type of literature is as appreciated as it is necessary. And I'll tell you, it's encouraging to see how this information is embraced, especially by parents of children who suffer from seizures, and to see how this information is received as a tool of empowerment that enables smarter decision-making as related to the care of their children. The Danny Did Foundation has as well subsidized seizure alarm monitors for 17 families spanning 12 states. We are grateful to be able to provide to these families and plan to expand this program to more devices and to more people. Beyond all that, Mary Ann and I are still just two parents trying to hold our lives together. We're getting up each morning and trying to gather enough pieces of ourselves to make it one more day without Danny. We are still haunted by the events of a Saturday morning in December 11 months ago, almost to the day. It was a dazzling morning, I remember. It was a morning that held a world of promise. As Mary Ann and I and our 4 kids were set for another Saturday of basketball games at the park. Instead, I found myself writing Danny's obituary, the last line of which reads, "Please go and enjoy your life." Danny did. And just as much as that line is the origin of the Danny Did Foundation's name, so too is it the legacy of my little boy. My little boy, who is driving a family and an organization to impact the world as profoundly as he himself would have, and as profoundly, I suppose, as he in fact is. So I'm proud to stand here together with everyone in this room and to be a part of talking about epilepsy and about talking about SUDEP, and to be a part of accepting the challenge and the responsibility of fighting epilepsy, and more than anything else, I'm proud to be a part of offering new hope in Danny's name to those living with epilepsy. Thank you for your attention and for your time.